Okay. So hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the grand finals of this year's ASDC 2022, debating on the motion, this House regrets the religion's reliance on miracles in promoting their faith to open the case, calling on Prime Minister here.
Hi, just a quick check that I'm audible and visible.
Yes, you are both.
Great, thank you. The existence of a religion is all about answering essential questions that are unanswerable. It is about what happens after death. It is about who created all that we know. But even more, it is about how we can find spiritual fulfillment and happiness in our lives. The existence of miracles in religion has pushed it to the margin. Now, it is about absolute power, about the unreasonable sacrifices that one has to make to be saved by the miraculous nature of religion. We regret a world in which people are sent to die in the Crusades for a world that can never happen. We regret the reliance of miracles in religion. A few points of framing for two arguments. Firstly, on why religion is more coercive in opposition, and secondly, on why religion is more anti-science on opposition, why we support pragmatism on our side of the house. On framing, what does this reliance of miracles look like? For example, it looks like the description of the Bible's description of when Jesus was on earth and how he was able to use his power to be super transformative and do miraculous things, like heal people who had fatal diseases and turn water into wine. It's also about Moses, who could part the seas to help these slaves of Egypt escape. Miracles are by definition things that normal humans cannot do, and notably, the reason why religions were able to use miracles in the past was because for the vast majority of history, science had not caught on. So before astronomy, before modern science, religion claimed a monopoly on how nature works. The figures in our religion can save you, and because how powerful they are, you should worship them and promote their faith in this way. Notably, this debate impacts the narrative of religion itself. So on their side of the house, religion is just in general going to be diametrically opposed to concepts like science. But fourthly, obviously, the very premise of religion is a miracle. So the fact that like God exists, Jesus can turn water into wine, that all of that is a miracle. But the difference in this debate is about whether or not you rely on the miraculous nature of religion to promote it. So the earthly manifestations of religion on their side of the house, like churches, are viewed as a miracle. But on our side of the house, we know there's a higher power, but all human aspect of this religion is fundamentally human. What is the counterfactual in this debate? If religions were not able to rely on miracles, we would note that it still want people to join their faith. So instead of saying that religion can save you, you aren't able to say that religions can do miraculous things, you would promote religion as a discovery of yourself, as making your life happier without being miraculous. So for example, success, love, and religion is all part of just the fulfillment of making you happy, not something unimaginable and inhuman. Our first argument is on why religion is more coercive. Before then, I'll take a point.
Don't squirrel this debate. Miracles obviously include things that have a very low likelihood of happening. For example, surviving the Holocaust. It's not just things that are only non-scientific.
If it is true that it has a very, very low likelihood of happening, we would still argue that promoting this to the general public creates a false perception that these are things that could happen to you, when in reality, the chance is very low. Firstly, why is religion more coercive? The premise of this argument is that without a reliance on miracles, religion will be far less coercive. Notably, we don't regret religion and we don't oppose religion as a whole. We think that religion has a lot of benefits. It can help people answer fundamentally unanswerable questions. It can help organize people into a single faith. But the harms of religion manifest exclusively where religion becomes coercive. When your local imam is able to get all the poor people in your village to donate their food and they all die of hunger. When your pope convinces you to fight in the crusade, when people are lied to, these are tangible harms that mean that people are convinced to do things that they otherwise would not have do. But why does the nature of miracles existing in religion and the promotion of that make it more coercive? The first thing to note is that relying on miracles pushes religion away from beyond any human institution that is beyond logic and reason. No matter what religion does, no matter what crusade they tell to join, they can justify it because they can bring miracles from God. But number two, religion no longer focuses on providing anything tangible and providing good benefits to individuals. So in miracles, you spend a lot of time trying to prove why religion can bring all these super miraculous things that people believe they cannot get anywhere else. But in the real world, you're able to get happiness through a variety of other means. But you would do anything to cure your kids, which means you would give an insane amount of money to church because you believe that you can get this salvation nowhere else. So the church is able to claim an exclusive monopoly on miraculous things that will just happen to you and claim that only they can give it to you. The comparative then is that even if you have an incentive to be coercive, there's less of an ability to do so on our side of the house. Anything religion that can promote, people can find it elsewhere. So it is just one tool in the toolbox. It also means that things like family relations are better, making you happy, and all these things are just not miraculous in nature. You're able to get these things from other metrics, like just being with your family, like just getting happiness from fulfilling your passions. So the result is that religion like needs to justify itself to the believers rather than the believers needing to justify themselves, no thank you, to religion. So the coercive nature is much less on our side of the house, to the extent at which people will not give up everything that they ever loved and everything that they ever like needed in order to give religion, so that they're able to do all these miraculous things for them. The second argument is about pragmatism, why religion becomes more anti-science on their side of the house. I would note, religion is good, but the benefits can only be limited to the religious realm. So we regret that religion has come at the cost of science and reason. It has done things like overtake governments, override democracies, oppose scientific fact that the sun is the center of the solar system, and imprison people based on that. We completely regret the clash between religion and science. How do miracles contribute to this? Insofar as your movement is based on miracles, it also means that you don't have to explain the things that you do, because a miracle by definition is unexplainable. You don't have to explain why Jesus could turn wine into water. These things are just magic, but they're maybe accumulated through enough good stuff, i.e. donating money to the church, to deserve it. This is incredibly problematic for a few reasons. The first reason this is problematic is because no one can argue against the church. Because the individuals believe that the church is a higher power, that they have the sole monopoly on creating miracles. So you're unable to give reasonable scientific arguments against that, because the religion can just say that it's a miracle. But number two, there's no way for religions to disagree with each other instead of fighting each other, which is what the likely comparative will be on their side of the house. Buddhism is the best way to live your life. Christian is a good philosophy. All these things are acceptable on our side of the house. But when you say that the Christian miracle is going to be that the Christians will win this war, that the Muslim miracle is going to be that the Muslims will win this war, on their side of the house, that is where you get religions clashing against each other. That when there are no longer discussions, when everything is not explainable, when you have to hold a sole monopoly over who gets better miracles and who can save more people, that is where religions clash. That is where you get things like wars that doesn't happen on our side of the house, because you have things like discussion. But thirdly, religion is no longer incentivized to actually improve the pragmatic things in society. So you're less incentivized to hand out free food to people, to improve governments in different countries, if you believe that miracles would just solve all these things and all these troubles would come across, that good people come across, are just going to be solved by miracles. And notably, this comes directly at the cost of things like aid, because on their side of the house, even if they wanted to give aid, they wouldn't be able to do it, because it would be completely contradictory to the fact that their religion expects these miracles to happen. What is the comparative in this argument? One, you get more debates and more logical reasonings within religion, because it's not seen as infallible. So religious institutions no longer need to defend their infallible ideas, rather you're able to have more discussions. So one religion on our side of the house is like a school of thought. For example, utilitarianism is a moral school of thought. Religion is also a school of thought. So everything about it is a miracle on their side of the house. You have to justify that it's correct, but on our side of the house, you can just justify it as the way people view things. But second, religion actually needs to solve all your problems, because they cannot rely on miracles to do that. But thirdly, religion is also likely to work with science on our side of how to promote your own religion, because if you can't save people through miracles, you need to promote things that actually work. So for example, deism, which is a branch of Christianity which all the founding fathers believed in, how God created the earth so that people can scientifically discover it, all these things are supported on our side of the house. We believe that belief is very strong, but only strong to the extent to which it is not coercive. I'm incredibly proud to stand on prompt.
Thank you so much for that fine speech. Now to open the case for the opposition, calling on LO. Here.
Yeah, just give me a second to set up my timer. Okay, so he, him pronouns, verbal POIs. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. We think that miracles saves lives and the souls of believers because they feel the presence of God in a time of desperation. We think that generally miracles are 3 different characteristics. First, they're generally positive things that happen to people or communities, like you wouldn't call a natural disaster a miracle. Secondly, events that are extremely improbable, so people don't experience these miracles on a daily basis and cannot imagine these events happening to them. But thirdly, religious believers probably knows that these miracles are possible, but they don't expect it on a daily basis. So in other words, it's possible but not probable. Yet this possibility is emphasized in probably religion, right? So given the possibility of, for example, leading them out of out of Egypt and the exodus actually happening is probably low, but it can happen. And lastly, all religions preach that miracles only happen after extremely tough sufferings and situations. And this is the stance that we take on this debate. So then what does promoting faith look like? I think simply enough is just to first increase the number of followers and secondly, increase the depth of belief in that faith. And this should be the weighing metric in this debate, because we think that generally religion is extremely good. Generally, religion helps people get out of tough times. I think generally this should be the weighing metric of the debate. So the burden we just have to take is simply to compare the counterfactual religion to simply a school of thought compared to when miracles are not part of religion from the start of time. So then I think firstly, I want to talk about the rebuttal of the comparative, because it's still really extremely unclear what proposition's comparative is. Their one-liner was that you want to push for the discovery of yourself, and presumably then therefore you don't have a central authority figure, right? The divine being is defined by being omnipotent. The definition of having a God is that you have power to do whatever you want because you are all powerful. Therefore, if a God cannot create miracles, there's no God, it's just a normal person. So therefore, they also have to stand for the comparative that God has no powers and it's just, for example, a central figure that is leading this leading religion. So therefore, I would say that posit that it's more likely that I want to flip this coercion argument, because when you have a central figure, it's more likely that for these people are average people that are able to pass down. For example, when you're able to have a central figure and pass down and claim yourself to be the legacy or the son of this person, you're more likely going to able to control religion. You're more likely going to twist the narrative because you're on the God and central figure of this authority is not like a divine being that you cannot interpret anymore, right? It's a person that already controls religion. It's more like going to have coercion on your side because you give all individuals, a normal person, all the power of a God. So therefore, we have two arguments in debate. First, how we inspire believers, and secondly, how we create motivation for underdogs. The first argument is about how proposition literally concedes our argument because they want religion to become a school of thought. Therefore, presumably there's no inspiration because it's just one person, right? There's no accountability measure about, for example, the concept of heaven and hell because the God cannot create miracles and have the power to do so. So therefore, the first part of the argument is that we continue inspire believers to continue believing because people follow for religion for the reason that they need to find solace from existentialism. They need to find their own peace that they can take their own light, and they need someone to confide to for all their misfortunes of their life. No, thank you. They continue on with their life because believing that the divine who creates miracles will save them, that God is empathetic. When you take away the ability for the divine to continue creating miracles, you take away the hope and accountability in their life. They hold themselves accountability to the norm of religion, e.g. Buddhism, which preaches the concept of karma. Once you do good enough deeds, you will get miracle one day that will manifest in your life as well. The impact is massive because we help no, thank you. We help them preserve through the toughest of times. Miracles incentivize people to believe in God, to create the miracle and empathize for them, to the point that during a point where there's a tremendous suffering, knowing that God is empathetic and God will alleviate you out of this suffering is immense. But the believers are continue to incentivize to do morally good things that in the hope that one day they will actually get a miracle, right? This is the checks and balance between a believer continuing to believe and doing good things in comparison to following, for example, not the laws of God. So therefore, we're able to help the most vulnerable have gone through the most suffering that they're able to continue on in their lives. The part two of this argument is that we're able to attract new believers. And the reason why a non-religious person, no thank you, would choose to join a religion is if the divine as an entity would create miracles to benefit themselves. The uniqueness of religion is purely that people would be following the teachings of a powerful entity. Miracles are the best way to do this because they're the only evidence that show that divine's power actually manifest in the real world, especially for the ones who are suffering, the ones who are in need in the escape of a dark reality. So therefore, we have far more larger and engaging community within religions. Larger communities become self-reinforcing with more members and good for vulnerable members that have gone through suffering. They can feel hope, more participation in donations of events, when only true when people are actively believing in religious and teachings and miracles that there's a positive thing to strive for. So therefore, this is an independent path to victory when we're able to talk about saving people in the darkest of times. Before I'm going to take you on.
If people have no incentive to do good things without the accountability of heaven and hell and the fear of a central omnipotent God, are all atheists evil?
We never said that all atheists is evil. atheists follow a different set of moral metrics compared to religion, right? Religion's people follow the moral metric of God and what God says is good and wrong. Atheist people have their own moral reasoning. I don't understand why this is part of the debate. The second argument is how we are able to create motivation for underdogs. The premise here is that miracles in religion uniquely motivate the people who are suffering and change against their oppressors. For example, Jesus being resurrected from the crucifixion of the oppression from the Roman government. In religions like Islam, the prophets are miraculously chosen to spread the word of God. So therefore, the first layer is that we're able to spread power for the minorities. For example, in the miracles in the Bible, the Quran, for example, they're in support of the minority. For example, the Hindu community respects trans people and LGBTQ people because there was a miracle that there was a child that was the third gender. For example, slaves uses religion to empower their own rise against enslavement. We think that the specific benefit of motivation of miracles to a minority is that miracles are able to are happening after suffering, and given that minorities suffer, they're more likely going to hope for a miracle and are going to happen and so that they can strive for the better. But the second layer is that miracles do not necessarily people in power, because for example, Afghanistan and Islamic belief that to help the Mujahideen become much stronger to fight against the Soviet Union, right? Comparatively to the Afghan government right now, which basically is falling apart. This is comparatively the far better method because miracles themselves are meant to be rare and powerful. There's a huge incentive for minorities to keep trying. On-site government, assuming that the beliefs aren't stressed, people typically lose their faith because there's no chance of actually with something better happening. On props counterfactual, if normalcy and tragedies are emphasized, there's no reason for the minority to try to persevere anymore. For these reasons, we're proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank that speaker for that very fine speech to extend the case for the government bench calling on DPM. Hear, hear.
Hi, can you still see and hear me?
Yep, you're both audible and visible.
Cool, thank you. I want to beat this opposition in a one-liner. We do not need to say that miracles don't exist on our side. We don't even need to say they don't occur frequently. All we need to do is not rely on miracles to convince people to join our religion. So there's no reason why we can't say God is powerful. There's no reason why we can't say that the Christian dogma that Christ turned like water into wine isn't true. The only thing that we aren't doing is that we're not using these miracles on a daily basis when proselytizing to tell people you should join a religion, because you can also turn water into wine in your own lives, because you can also cure your son's cancer, for example. That is what we are not doing in this debate. So what is then the delta? Here's a delta, right? We can co-opt all of their benefits, but their benefits are exponentially better on our side because people can freely opt into them. There's no benefit of opting to religion and its benefits if you cannot opt into it freely. Yes, opt might claim that this is objectively good, but for many people, religion isn't objectively good, right? For many people, religion is oppressive, it is repressive, it tells you to override rationality, take leaps of faith. For some individuals, it might be good, for others, it might be harmful. The point is that religion is pretty much morally neutral, and they can't claim that it's just an objective good for everyone, because they don't have the epistemic absence to claim this, right? And so the point here is that if religion is morally neutral, then the way in which we assess if it is good or not is the capacity for people to opt in and out of it. And to the extent in which they pretty much concede coercion by saying that miracles allow you to put yourself in a position of authority, I think we already win this debate off of my framing right off the start. But the second thing I want to point out as part of my debate of this speech that also wins this debate is the fact that under our side, we can allow individuals to frame miracles in their own lives and to believe in what they think miracles are, right? Because what is important is that under the side of opposition, when you rely on miracles to convince people to join your religion, the religion necessarily has a monopoly over what miracles look like. Because they talk about miracles so much, because they sensationalize them to so much to make you join that religion, they control what they say miracles look like. So if you want to survive a plane crash, for example, you don't feel like this is a miracle because your religion didn't tell you that was a miracle, because they told that a miracle was, for example, doing extraordinary things. That's the most likely interpretation of this notion. Under our side, when religion doesn't talk about miracles that much, it means that you have more freedom to interpret what miracles look like in your own lives. That is truly when you can interpret mundane things to transform them into miracles and to feel hope in your very own lives. That is when we can beat them at their own case. Two questions then. Firstly, I want to talk about the individual's interaction with religion. Secondly, I want to talk about what would be better the establishment of religion. Firstly, about the individual interaction with religion. This is important to convince people to join religion because religion is inherently good and therefore miracles are very, very good, right? Two responses. Firstly, as I point out in framing, religion is morally neutral because they can't claim that for everyone religion is going to be beneficial. Throughout history, it has been extremely oppressive. People who are indoctrinated often have trauma because they were told about heaven and hell is just a very traumatic notion because if you don't do exactly what the Bible tells you, you're afraid that Satan will take you away and you will burn in hell forever. So the point is that yes, religion has some benefits, it also has a lot of harms, therefore it is pretty much morally neutral. So the delta in this debate is which side can prove the opt-in mechanism and which side has more consent. We told you about religion is oppressive in 3 key respects, and they pretty much can see this because our entire case are reliant on coercing people to join religion. The first thing we told you about is that it overrides rationality and logic. That when you only talk about miracles and miracles exclusively, you polarize the spectrum. Atheists can no longer participate in that discussion because you squash any conversation. Anytime someone comes up with you and points out the excesses of religion, you can no longer talk because you just told them that these miracles are clearly things that happen and your entire establishment is based onto them. But secondly, it's because you can outcompete any form of benefits, right? So for the vast majority of human history, most people lived as peasants. Most people lived at the bottom of society. So when religion told them and promised them extraordinary things, that's when they joined the Crusades. That's when they did things like go die for their religion when it was not necessary, right? Because it overrided what they expected as benefits and it sensationalized what they could expect out of that religion. But clearly, if you don't participate in that religion, religion can now frame you as against these miracles when it exclusively relies on miracles to promote its religion. The point is that all these things are super coercive, and to the point at which we cannot guarantee that religion is an objective good for everyone, you should at least have an opt-in and opt-out mechanism, right? But let's just say it is true that religion is like exclusively good, right? Let's take that in our very best case that religion is very good. The problem is that having miracles is actually very bad for people joining religion. The reason is one, polarization, as pointed out previously, but secondly, like most people nowadays are very educated and believe in science, and miracles are precisely what make people go away from religion because they think it's like very overriding of their own rationality and goes against their own scientific intuitions. So even if they take it at their case in the very best case, they still don't prove it. But the last thing I want to prove on here is why they make the establishment of religion worse. Because like religion is only good if like the Catholic Church and all of these organized religion that monopolize religion in most of human society are going to interpret it in a good way. The problem is that when you rely on miracles, one of the fundamental pillars of your religion becomes the overriding of logic and the pushback against science. The reason why is very simple, because if people become more scientifically literate, then the Catholic Church has no more ability to convince people with miracles because people wouldn't believe in miracles. That's why, for example, in the 1800s, throughout human history for millennia, the Catholic Church has constantly locked down scientists and put them in prison like Galileo because they were afraid they would convince the human population to no longer believe in the rhetoric of the Catholic Church. That is harmful because it means that not only does religion start to stand against science, but crucially what it means is that you cannot check religion anymore. Because any single time you point towards excesses of the Catholic Church tells you that miracles can happen. So you can never outweigh the benefits of, and you can never outweigh their benefits with your harms, right? And what that means, you can never hold them to account at the point at which their very religion is built on the overriding of rationality and logic. That is when you can never hold them accountable. That is when the establishment of religion is bad. That is when joining religion is not inherently good. So I think it's already this proves their entire case. But let me go one step further, right? They say that like on their side, people can believe in miracles and therefore they can find a lot of hope, right? I have a lot of responses to this, right? The first thing I want to note is on their side, the rhetoric of religion is likely to empower extraordinary things that won't happen in people's ordinary lives. The reason for this is twofold. The first thing to know is that in order to convince people to sacrifice their entire lives to an abstract being that they would never see, is the only way to do this is basically promise them extraordinary things. If you promise them things that could happen anyways without the existence of a god, they will never join your religion because they don't see a point in it. So you're forced to promise them things that science cannot explain, extraordinary things that don't happen to most individuals. Secondly, if you only promote mundane things as miracles, other religions will outcompete you. Because all religions rely on miracles to convince people on the dirt side of the house. If one religion tones down its miracles, the other religion will say, like, look, we can save 10,000 people. And what that means is that there's a race up to the bottom of like sensationalizing these miracles and making them extraordinary. What that means that the miracles that happen on their side, the monopolization of the rhetoric around like these like types of like miracles are going to exclusively look like extraordinary things that don't happen to individuals ordinary lives. Why is this bad? This is bad because religion becomes an unfulfilling experience. Because when I am in a religion and I don't experience the miracles that the church promised me, that's when I do not see the benefits of religion. Even though I may have felt peace and hope in an alternative world, and on a their world, you don't feel these emotions because you just think that the Catholic Church has failed me, that didn't like receive the expected benefits of that religion. But furthermore, on our side, when these miracles are not a big part of the discourse, you can interpret miracles for yourself. So for example, if you survive the Holocaust, you can interpret this as a miracle. Or if you survive a plane crash, you can interpret this as a miracle in your own life because the church no longer monopolizes what miracles look like. That is when you have no more sensationalization of miracles and when you have no longer risk or bottom, people can find hope in very mundane and banal things in life. That is how we give individuals that hope, and I'm very proud to propose.
I'd like to thank that speaker for a very fine speech. A reminder to all speakers to please keep POIs within the first minute and the 6th minute. Now proceeding to extend the case for the opposition bench, calling on DLO. Here.
Hi, can I confirm that I can be heard?
Yes, you can be heard.
Great, thank you. Sorry, just my time already. Okay. I'm gonna start in 3, 2, 1. Before I move on to the actual questions, I just want to call out how incredibly soft the proposition case is and how weird the counterfactual is. They essentially tell you that on their side, they're somehow able to still have miracles happen. They can still talk about miracles, and yet they just don't really discuss them as a whole inside the religion and don't use this as a way of getting people to buy it in the first place. You have to note that on their side, in order for them to support a world where religions don't actively use miracles as the way to create buy-in in the first place, i.e. basically what the motion means, their side therefore will barely ever talk about these miracles as something that is highly impactful and is highly powerful in the first place. Their side will rarely ever bring up miracles as a method of basically promoting one's faith, because they have alternative methods, such as quote unquote finding your own set of religion in the first place. Notes that for most religions under status quo today, the core way you're able to get buy-in and promote faith in the first place is to allow for miracles to happen, is to get people to believe in these things to happen in the first place. So in order to access the benefits of religion, you need to have this buy-in in the first place. We don't think the counterfactual works in any way on their side. Therefore, we think on opposition side, we're the side that shows you why uniquely we're able to get more buy-in, why we're able to promote faith, why this hope outweighs all the impacts coming from their side. 3 things in my speech then. 1, on the issue of buy-in, whether it's justified or not, which is basically kind of a response to the first argument of coercion. Second of all, on pragmatism and how we're able to more benefit more individuals under our side. Third, for the individuals themselves. While we think on our side, people are generally more happy, and this is a crucial way of winning this debate. First of all, let's just deal with this general argument about coercion as well as how people interact with religion independently, because this is sort of the main claim coming out of side proposition. They tell you that essentially utilizing these things such as miracles is an incredibly coercive force that basically coerces individuals to do things that they don't want. They essentially bring up the fact that, well, in the Crusades, for example, people were basically coerced into doing these things and therefore harming lots of individuals in the first place. 2 things here. First of all, I think this issue is mostly parallel in the first place. You still have things like the afterlife that motivate individuals. Second of all, realize that on their side, when the individuals no longer have this identity, have this idea of a miracle itself, you're unlikely going to inspire this sort of hope for individuals inside these areas. People utilize religion as a way to cope. They utilize religions as a way to deal with all the harmful things that are happening throughout their lives in the first place. On your side, you never emphasize miracles at all. You don't bring them up. You only talk about them as if they're things that just happened in the past, like a historical event. There's no way that people are able to utilize this inside times where they need to be able to do this in the first place. And I just want to address coercion in general, because I think my partner has already given you a very clear flip of the argument itself. Because of the fact that now you make the sense of power, i.e. inside status quo today, inside religion right now, God is an omnipotent force. They have insane amounts of power they're able to utilize with miracles, and miracles are the only way to show that this omnipotent power actually does exist. On their side, therefore, you're going to have these sorts of powers be basically limited to one individual, such for example, the church leader, such for example, a priest, such for example, even someone random in the first place who can basically call themselves the son of God anytime, because the fact that you don't have a clear definition of what miracles is, because the fact you don't have a clear definition of what God is in the first place. So then you're more likely going to have coercive forces, because 1, it is easier to coerce because you no longer have this huge standard. 2nd, it is much easier to get away with coercion because of the fact that there's no way of checking it for accountability, because on their side, you have no way of checking if miracles really did happen or not. So therefore, on their side, if they want to talk about coercion, what religion looks like on their side is twofold. 1, all their impacts of polarization happen much more on their side when religions are more individual based rather than have a central authority. So therefore, you're going to have competing factions that are always going to be warring against each other because of their interpretation of what a miracle is. Second of all, on your side, you're actively going to support things such as oppressing minorities simply because of the fact that their miracle basically contradicts yours in the first place, even within certain religions that believe in the same God in the first place. So therefore, if they want to talk about coercion, note the impact still manifests on their side. They basically didn't respond to this in their their deputy. Third thing on coercion as a whole, realize that if we were to win this debate, if we were to weigh this debate, we have to weigh the fact that on our side, you're still able to get individual people who are going to be actively benefited in the first place. Because sure, assuming the absolute best case that a lot of people are basically coerced into joining religion, if we're able to prove to you that you're still able to get benefits out of religion in the first place, I think it is generally good on our side. Therefore, because the fact that we already showed you the active benefits of religion in the first place, I think we already won this clash because A, we showed you why coercion is mostly parallel. Second, we showed you why coercion could be more actively used in a worse way on their side. Third, we showed you that even if coercion exists, it's still not going to be a necessary harm when on our side, you get things like one, you have self-reinforcing community groups. Second, you have more active donations. Third, you have more individuals buying to religion, therefore reducing the amount of mental harm they have on their life in the first place. So therefore, on this issue alone, I think we win and basically take down one of their huge claims coming from side proposition. Second thing then, on pragmatism, on their side, they tell you that simply enough, a lot of these individual churches utilize these miracles as a way to disprove science. Three things here. One, we don't see the link between religion and basically opposing science directly. On our side, you're still able to have religions that have scientific sources in the first place. In our side, you have religion, but are still able to allow individuals who believe in science to still be able to function. We don't see this in the status quo today when religion and science can go together with individuals utilizing religion to help themselves emotionally and science to help themselves pragmatically. Second of all, note that on their side, if they want to talk about science, realize that for them, because of the individual basis of how a miracle is defined in the first place, even on their side, you're still going to have the same sorts of sense and same narrative that things are still going to happen. You're still going to have the same narrative. Individuals don't want to believe in science simply because of the fact that individuals under their side are the ones that are determining miracles. Third, let's have on our side, as our PM has, as our Ella has already very clearly labeled out to you in the first place. Realize that for a lot of these miracles, they are possible but not probable. That's to say that therefore, for a lot of individuals, they're not necessarily expecting miracles to suddenly swoop in and to save all their lives. Most of these individuals are utilizing miracles as a way to help themselves after everything else has been expended in the first place. So therefore, on our side, even in the absolute worst case, a lot of these miracles don't necessarily manifest, at least to give final moments of hope for all these individuals, at least to give some sort of solace for these people that they've actually believed in God and have been happy in the first place. So in terms of pragmatism, on our side, A, you have individuals who still believe in science because by you don't have competing narratives, you don't have individual narratives. Second, on our side, you're actually able to get people who can still use this pragmatically to benefit themselves inside their lives, but they're more happy and therefore more likely to pursue things such as advocacy, more likely to pursue things such as being able to seek doctors because they have not lost hope with their sick daughter in the first place. Note that therefore, just to do a bit of brief weighing, on their side, their entire case revolves around two things. One is about coercion. Second, about how people reject science. We've just proved both of them and showed why these things will be worse on their side. On our side, we told you that religion is an act of good because even if their deputy comes here and tells us that, it's a moral neutrality, we think we already showed you pragmatic impacts as to why we get more people to bond together, why we get communities, why we get help for minorities in the first place. So on our side, you manifest all of these benefits with uniquely miracles. They don't have any. We are so proud to oppose.
Thank you so much for that fine speech. To conclude the constructive case of government, calling on GovVip, here.
Hi, can everybody see and hear me?
Yep, you can be both seen and heard.
Okay, cool. My pronouns are she, her, and I don't have any POI preferences. Before I get onto my clashes, I just want to take down this really weird rebuttal that you hear from side opposition that they try to apply to every single argument that we ran in this debate, which is that if you don't define miracles as an organized religious institution, one random person will step out, claim that they are the son of God, and use that to oppress everyone, which is the one-size-fits-all rebuttal they have been using for all of our arguments. I have two responses from the top of my speech as to why you should just knock this rebuttal out of your flow. The first is that this sounds exactly like what religions have been doing for hundreds of years on their side anyways, which is the harm of their side, right? Because on their side, no, you don't just have one definition of miracles, you still have multiple definitions of miracles on their side. So you still do have multiple different actors arguing over what these miracles are supposed to look like. You don't just have one religion at the dawn of time said, this is our definition of miracle, and every other religion religion accepted that the Christian miracle was the right miracle or the Muslim miracle was the right miracle, and they just all ran on with it. Instead, you have all of these religions with a different version of miracles arguing over what their miracle is. The second response is just, it's vastly unclear to me why this one individual will be believed over all of the organized religion on their side of the house, right? Presumably on their side, if there's millions of Christians and the Catholic Church tells them that they are the wielders of miracles on earth, then all of those followers are far more likely to believe the Catholic Church, given that they believe in that religion, whereas one random individual stepping out and saying that they are the son of God is likely just to be seen as an insane person who won't be believed. So on our side, those miracles are far less convincing to the average individual anyways. Given that that's like the one rebuttal to the bulk of our case, you should already consider them vastly unresponsive and uncharitable in this debate. Two clashes to my speech. First, on which side are religions better for their followers? Second, on which side are religions better for everyone else? Firstly, then, for their followers, note that the majority of opposition case in this debate only lies exclusively under their clash point, because they only want to prove why religion is good for the people who are more people to join religion. That was the weighing thing they gave you at the very start of first. The first thing that side opposition tells you under this clash is religion can be inspirational to people and force them to do good things. And for some reason, the only way religion can be inspirational is to have an omnipotent God and heaven and hell. The first thing is that this is just factually wrong. An easy intuition pump is to look at atheists who they themselves concede develop independent moral metrics without religion interpreting morality for them. People are good because it is hard to bring yourself to hurt another human being you know. This exists regardless of miracles. A similar intuition pump is the Buddhist religion, which has no omnipotent God and no heaven and hell, just the karmic cycle. By simply explaining nature in a fairly philosophical way by talking about suffering, Buddhism is also able to exist as a religion. Optimism proved the exclusivity of the bulk of their case. You do not need a miracle if your philosophical reasoning, or your school of thought as they call it, is sound logically and properly explains why certain things shouldn't be done because they are immoral. The second response is that this argument is also based on a pretty abusive understanding of emotion. The Christian God is presumably omnipotent on both sides, regardless of how later Christians chose to promote their religion that is already written into the Bible. Miracles are just things contradictory to the laws of physics on earth. It presumably does not even apply to some abstract notion of God. The debate Opp needed to engage with, which they didn't, was the human appropriation of religious miracles of God. The Catholic Church going around saying, if you appease them, miracles will happen in your life. The third response is, even if you buy their interpretation of the motion, don't buy their assertion of impacts. It is unclear why it is such a benefit that people live their entire lives afraid of going to hell, and that is a good thing. That in the hundreds of years for which average people were illiterate, the church was able to tell people what to do by saying, I read the Bible, and the Bible says you must donate all your income to go to heaven, and why that was a good thing. Even if you buy the exclusivity of heaven and God to their side, religion as a whole, they have not proven why that is a good thing, therefore they cannot take that impact. The next thing that side opposition tells you is religions are an equalizer, because in one single religious story, miracles allowed society to become equal, and as such, for the rest of history, that allowed religion to become an equalizer for society. Two responses to this. The first is that this is exactly why example debating doesn't work, right? Because there's far more examples that hurt their case than help them. The aristocracy in Europe was also able to talk about their miracle being the chosen one. Their wealth was a miracle preordained by God. That religion was used to justify slavery because by miracle, God gave the chosen ones people to work for them. So yeah, maybe in one biblical story, a miracle equalized society, but in thousands of human stories thereafter, the excuse of a miracle was then used to justify oppression. This debate is not just about abstract miracles as they exist in the Bible. It is about how humans use miracles throughout history. That is why this is a regrets motion. The second response is that we also prefer a world in which reasoning is used to equalize. So oppressed people on our side still have the incentive to try and equalize society, still have the incentive to protest, and still have the incentive to become more equal within society. On our side, equality has to be justified because you cannot just assert that magically and miraculously. You need a miracle. This is better because once you justify and prove something logically, you'll have to disprove it in order to have it to go away, whereas miracles are asserted and can be counter-asserted by any other side, and miracles simply perpetuate inequality in society because whoever has a louder voice can assert things louder, whoever has more power can push their assertion onto everyone else in a society. This goes back to our case about science and anti-scientific things, because miracles, given that they do not require logic, given that they do not require reasoning, given that the very definition of miracle is low probability things that shouldn't have happened but did happen anyways, they cannot be argued against. So whoever has more of a voice in society has a supreme monopoly over miracles in society. The last and strongest thing you heard from opposition is people can gain hope through religion because they believe religion will give them miracles. The first is that religion is still promoted on our side. You can gain hope through things that are likely to happen instead on our side, instead of things that are improbable in the first place. The hope for their miracles is based on very low probability things like your child being cured of cancer. Individuals will be devastated when those miracles do not happen on their side. Religion on our side is forced to promote themselves through actually probable things. Like, yes, you will probably die of cancer, but if you use your time wisely in the last few months of your life, you are also able to live happily in those last few months, because religion is also telling you that you should spend time with your family, that you should love people around you, and that will be what is going to give you a happy life. These are probable things that are guaranteed on our side, which is better. But secondly, individuals will still expect these miracles to happen to them on their side because all people are myopic. They all believe that their suffering that they experience the most viscerally is the worst, which is that all people will expect miracles and want miracles to happen to them regardless of what religion says. For all these reasons, I'm very proud to propose.
Thank you so much for that fine speech. Now to conclude the opposition side of the House, calling on Upwhip, you're here.
Can I just check if I am audible and I can be seen?
You're both.
Great. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The Mujahideen force in the 1970s were a group of Muslims that fought against Soviet invaders in Afghanistan. These random civilians were literally confronted with iron-plated tanks. It was the faith in miracles, religion, that told this group to use AK-47s to banish the invaders that plundered their home. It was also the faith in miracles that told slaves to unfurl their banner of freedom and shatter the shackles of enslavement. I'm going to answer 2 very simple questions in this debate. First, do we get strength in the average believer? And second, about motivating the minority and the oppressed. Before that, I'm going to make the crucial clarification that destroys proposition case. What is their comparative? They say that religion on their side of the house is going to be a school of thought. Just listen to this rubbish that we get from first, right? They say that they're going to be able to discuss who is in power, who's omnipotent, and whatever happens. First of all, this is literally not how religion works, right? If they want to redefine religion into a philosophy, we never get an answer as to why this philosophy is going to be strong enough to cause people to still want to continue living, right? People sometimes are really poor. People sometimes don't have any reason to live anymore the next day. Religion gives us an answer to this, and publishing destroys the religion. But secondly, this literally concedes all our harms of how you can have an individual leader on their side of the house, because the extent that they don't want anyone that's omnipotent, no thank you, POIs in chat, the extent that they don't want anyone omnipotent is when you make this power and give this power to some random civilian leader and make this open to the possibility of even more manipulation. I'm going to add on that later. First question, on the strength of the average believer, I'm going to make 2 subclasses in this theme. First of all, I want to talk about inspiration, which was just belittled in this debate by proposition, right? They say 2 premises here. The first, that miracles never happen, and secondly, therefore, believers in religion lose faith on our side of the house. We think this ignores our context and mechanism we gave you from first. Just to reiterate, right? Miracles can be interpreted, right? It's not just that miracles have to be non-science, that all of a sudden, like this iPhone has to float on top of the table, therefore it is a miracle, right? The fact that I might make it to the finals can be a miracle. The fact that I go to SAS, the fact that I was born in a privileged family in the middle of Shanghai, which is one of the most developed countries in the cities in the world, can be a miracle for me. These are all up to interpretation, even when it is incorporated in religion, and especially that because there's different interpretation, especially like, for example, in the Quran or in the Bible. The comparative we get here is either normalcy or tragedy. We can feel this because if they don't have miracles, then obviously they won't have something that's like very unexpected happen, right? And look at their deputy. Their deputy says that like, oh, but miracles just won't happen that regularly on our side of the house. But like, that defeats the purpose of this motion. First of all, that's against the field of this motion. But secondly, that concedes all of our impacts, because if they want miracles to happen to some extent, that means they concedes there's some inherent value in miracles. I think they destroyed their case from second. But the second premise was that miracles never happen. Therefore, you're going to lose faith as an average believer. The response to this is simple. Miracles in religion literally prevents this, right? This scripture describes how the prolonged suffering of an individual is what causes you to want miracles. The fact that there hasn't been a miracle for the last year is something that is good, because it means that there might be a miracle very soon. And even if there's not a miracle in the next week or even year, there is a more possibility for a miracle, because in the scripture of things like the Quran and the Bible, it literally stipulates that the reason why you're going through suffering right now is you're going to have a miracle in the future. And that might be in the form of the afterlife, that might be in the form of after you die, but that's always going to be a miracle. And this is something that is going to indoctrinate faith inside of people. I want to re-emphasize the counterfactual now again, right? Like, their world has no answer to an existential crisis though, right? We think that it's very common that people have crises. It's a reason why religion is so popular in the world right now. Look at Russia invading Ukraine, look at climate change, look at all these answers all these problems that we don't have answers to. On their side of the house, when it becomes discussion, that only defeats the purpose of religion, because it concedes to science. It concedes to the fact that our world is dying right now. It concedes that we're unable to ever get ourselves out of this disaster, which means on their side, if you're poor, you're going to believe in capitalism. You're never going to be wealthy if you're poor. And that's how a person will believe on their side. Why is this so impactful in this debate? 3 reasons why this is impactful. First, notice that this is a regrets motion, which means it is from the dawn of time. That is, in Rome, where life expectancy was 30 years. They're going to tell people that they're going to die in 30 years. There's no chance of the afterlife, because there basically isn't religion on their side. There's no miracles. The afterlife won't happen, right? This is the reason why people will not want to wake up to see the next light of the next day on their side of the house. But also, secondly, we told you the argument of karma. The only reason why there is such a strong impetus for karma for religious believers is because miracles motivate you to do something, right? Like, on their side, we don't get why a person would want to do a good deed, especially if there won't be a miracle in the near future. On our side, karma is going to incentivize more believers to donate, to give to society, because they believe they can possibly and potentially receive a miracle in the long future. The miracle is the requisite to this, because it is the present that you're going to receive in the far future, although the future isn't defined. Lastly, I want to talk about the poor and the inequality, right? Because on Prop's belief in science and capitalism, the poor never have a chance. We don't get why they would even try to live on their side of the house. This means at the end of this subclash, we already proved why religion is the most beneficial for the the greatest number of people. That might not be in the form of fighting wars, but that is in the form of everyday life. Second subclash, about science. I think there is a disjunct link between religion and non-science, because Prop is basically debating about cults. They assert in their first speeches that, like, hey, you know what? Religion means you don't believe in COVID, and therefore, like, when you get cancer, you aren't going to cure it. 3 responses we give to you down the bench. First, most people have an intersection of reality and religion. For example, you will get cancer treatment. The miracle here is that maybe you might survive from cancer treatment if you keep going to get it. Secondly, let's weigh happiness and faith. You maintain a happy life on our side of the house when you're very hopeful of what happens in the future. On their side, when you know that you got a disease, when you know that you got life-ending disease, that's when you don't have any reason to live for the next day anymore. Lastly, on the last clash about motivating the minority and the oppressed, right? The reason why we think miracles on our side of the house have greater capacity to help the most vulnerable rather than help those in power is what was argued in first. We told you that even if the same miracles happen, it is much harder to justify oppression on our side of the house, right? For example, look at Afghanistan. It's much harder for the Afghan government right now to justify them staying in power compared to years ago when Mujahideen fighted against Soviet soldiers when they were the underdogs. This exclusively proves that miracles exclusively help those that are under power because they are exclusively the ones that are going through suffering. Look at the Holocaust. Look how Jews believed in their religion and survived to the end. Look, the same impacts of miracles don't apply to oppressors. The same impacts of miracles don't apply to their side of the house. We're very proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank that speaker for that very fine speech. And now to begin the reply exchange, calling on up reply here.
Okay, cool. So let me get my timer ready. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. What does proposition tell the Jews that are locked into the horrendous dorms of Auschwitz, where thousands of Jews are killed every day? What does proposition tell the Afghanis on the front line facing the troops of tanks and rocket launchers of the most powerful regime, the Soviet Union? Proposition tells them you will die. You will be smothered and decimated and you have no hope to live. We say that having miracles gives God power and gives hope to people. At the end of the debate, proposition cried about a whole bunch of harms, but I'll talk about the harms later in the speech. But the question is still, what is their comparative? The question at the first speech, they just said our comparative is like we'll have it transform it into a school of thought. We won't have a central authority figure because they don't have the power to become omnipotent. But the question for me is just like, how do you prevent coercion on your side? You have a far lower standard to prescribe yourself as a leader of a religion. Their response was just that religion does this as well. The difference we told you is that about what you represent, right? You represent a prophet, but you don't have to prove it on their side. On our side, at least on our side, you have to prove to people that you have to get the entire society to buy in that the miracle is in line with your religion and in line with the person that you represent, and therefore you are the leader of that religion. So therefore, I think at the end of the debate, proposition actually doesn't have a comparative when you talk about what their like what a religion without miracles looks like. When there's no miracles, there's no checks and balances onto what people should believe in because their moral compass is skewed to the fact that they don't have to follow the standards of God because there's no consequence because God is not powerful enough, right? So therefore, I would say that religion probably exists on the both sides of the house. Believers will not just like vanish on the other side of the house because they don't have the fiat to say that we're just going to abolish religion, right? So therefore, I think they had to still stand for the fact that religion still exists and the majority of people in the world still believe in some sort of majority religion. And therefore, when people still believe on religion and you take that away from them, this is probably to say that they will have absolutely no incentive to wake up and see the light of tomorrow. But at the end of the debate, what is our most substantial material, which is about happiness and influence, right? I think compared to the two arguments, this is massive because the argument about science just falls out of the debate because it's unclear as to why like religious people have to follow in science, but like because religion obviously constrains themselves to some sort of science laws, right? Like presumably if you win the lottery, it might be a miracle within religion, but that doesn't mean you don't believe in science, right? There's still a scientific probability that will win the lottery. I think that generally that's just true, that in the fact that, for example, when a poor person wins a lottery, you can still believe in science. So it's just unclear as to why like not believing in science is extremely bad of a thing, specifically when you have your own moral compass to continue your life, right? But secondly, just weigh this, right? Even in the worst case scenario where like you don't believe in science and you like, for example, go up and spread some propaganda or some like like myth, right? Presumably happiness still matters more, because even if in the worst case that you, for example, don't experience the miracle, I think that it's still better to believe that a miracle will happen to you and a miracle would actually benefit your life, that there's something to look forward to because God is at least empathetic on our side. So therefore, the delta on our side is simply enough that happiness exists to the extent that people can be even sublime to the fact that they will never experience a miracle, they will never win the lottery, they might be not cured of their cancer, but that the difference is that if they're able to live, they're the best case, that they're able to experience happiness hoping for more, right? The last thing is just like, for example, that slavery wouldn't have ended if people didn't believe in God, that God would have, God endowed them with the fundamental right to life in liberty and pursuit of happiness, right? People wouldn't have cried out the battle cries for God, that they wouldn't have escaped slavery if God didn't have endowed them with the life, liberty, and happiness. But if comparatively on their side, they have absolutely no claim, that a random person can just claim themselves to be God, there's no incentive to care about the vulnerable. For these reasons, we're proud to oppose.
Thank you so much for that very fine speech. Now to conclude the Gov case as well as the round, calling on Gov reply, here.
Hi, can you still see and hear me?
Yep, we are both.
Cool, thank you. Religion can still give individuals hope by helping them appreciate their family and their lives. It does not need to rely on the extraordinary to make individuals feel happy. And all the components in religion which give people hope, which make them feel loved, which make them feel like the most powerful being in the world cares about them, can still exist under our side of the house. I think the difference is that under our side, religion doesn't rely on miracles. But it doesn't mean that we destroy religion. We can obviously still promulgate the messages of love, of morality that religion propagates. The only difference is that we have a more rational expectation of what religion can bring into the world. What does that look like? That means that under our side, when religion doesn't use miracles to convince people, these individuals necessarily have a more rational expectation of what these miracles would look like. And that in turn allows them to find more fulfillment. That allows them to see miracles in mundane things in life. So for example, as a poor person, once you get a higher paying job, you can see this as a miracle. You can see this as God intervening in your life and feel hope. So for all the examples they gave about people who are in destitute poverty or just like in oppression, these will feel better under our side because they can see light in random things in life. On their side, the reason why this is impossible is because if your religion uses miracles as an active way to convince people, that necessarily means that you're going to sensationalize these miracles and give a definition of them that has a very high bar. The reason for this is because you want to convince people to join your religion. And if you do not give a very extraordinary definition of what these miracles look like, other religions will and will co-opt all of your followers. So the only way in which you can guarantee a stream of people coming to you is by sensationalizing, by giving extremely extraordinary pictures and illustrations of what these miracles look like on their side. What that then means that all their examples go under our side, because it is under our side that people who live in the worst countries on earth, in the most conservative countries on earth, who are oppressed on a daily basis, can see simple things and can see them as God intervening in their lives and can see them as miracles because they can define them for themselves. That is why we win on giving people hope. But what was the most important thing in this debate? I think the most important thing in this debate was clearly science, because as they said, this debate happens from the dawn of time. And what that meant is that they also had to engage with the Catholic Church, locking up scientists, pushing back against scientific literacy, because they were afraid that people becoming more scientific, more rational, more logical would make them believe less in the miracles the Catholic Church was propping up. That's why the Catholic Church notoriously burned people who believe in the Galilean model of the solar system, right? That's why crucially these people were locked away, and why scientific advancements in Europe was slowed down by perhaps hundreds of years, because the Catholic Church was so afraid that one of its fundamental pillars of miracles would be demeaned when science becomes strong in Europe. So that is what they need to engage with in this debate. But what was the impact of this, right? I think the impacts of this overweight everything they talk about, because all the benefits of religion talk about are very uncertain. Things like miracles can happen and things like hope can happen, but you don't need hope when science improves and can cure the flu, which then means that your child doesn't die when it is an infant, and which then means that you have more fulfillment and ways of living life. Miracles, even if they happen very rarely, but as science improves, it can help people on a daily basis at a very low cost. And these miracles that people consider miracles in middle age are now common occurrences in modern life. So clearly, science is the most important thing in this debate. Their only response here was basically like, oh, but science is pretty parallel because on our side, coercion will still exist and people will still not believe in science. The problem is that they give no reason why that was the case. We told that our comparative was very simple. Once you do not rely on miracles to convince people, there's no reason why you need to rely your entire religion and banking on the extraordinary. Rather, you're more likely to have reasonable interpretations of what people can expect from their religion. You're more likely to do not oppose science because these things don't hurt your religion anymore, right? And to that extent, they really don't respond to your entire case. And given that we weighed very well, I think we already defeated their entire case with that simple piece of weighing. But furthermore, I think their entire response to our case was just an intuition pump. They just said that if people can interpret miracles for themselves, someone can just claim they're the son of God, they're the son of God, and factions will rise and wars will happen. But this makes no sense. Yes, someone can claim they're the son of God under our side, but under our side, we don't normalize extraordinary experiences. So this person wouldn't be believed because Catholic Church wouldn't have normalized this. It is under their side when you normalize these miracles that people believe everything they're told. They override their rationing and logic, and that's why they're more radical, and that is why they're more extreme. So for all these reasons, because we better science, because we better hope, I'm very proud to propose.
All right. Thank you so much for that fine speech. And that concludes the reply exchanges of the round. So I'd like to congratulate both teams once again, and you may now cross the house. I believe the